everyone, welcome to the webinar today. We're going to get started in a few minutes. You'll see that we've added a question at the bottom of the screen. Please feel free to go and answer, tell us what your favourite animal is and say hi to everyone that's watching today. Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar. We're really excited today to be looking at Google Sites and Google Forms, and I'm hoping that there's lots of questions coming in down the side as we go through today, and we'd really like to make sure that we have time to answer some of these as well. So today we're joined by myself. So I'm Kiri, I am the National Accounts Manager in the Google for Education team in the UK. We also have Andy Caffrey joining us again from EdTech Team UK, and Emma, his colleague, who is a Google certified trainer as well. We also have some great speakers for you today. Really excited to welcome the team from Tanfield School, so that's Dan and Nisha. And we also have the team from Britannia Village School, that's Luke and Kate. And later on, they're going to be sharing their stories of how they're using Sites and Forms. And we'll at the end have an opportunity to answer any of your questions you have coming in. From the previous webinars we've done, we know that we often run out of time for questions. So today we're going to try and make sure that we leave enough time to make sure that you get the answers that you're looking for. The agenda for today looks like this. So we are going to do a welcome and an intro to Google for Education. We're going to show you some of the resources that are helpful to go back to. We're also going to be looking at Google Sites and I put Hangouts Forms there, that's not right, Google Forms, and then school stories of impact. So let's get started. Welcome and intro to Google for Education. So as you'll know, for some of you that signed up for the webinar today and got an email or a calendar invitation from me, that's because you went to sign up to the webinar page that basically registers your interest for all of the upcoming webinars we have over the next few weeks/months. So what we're really keen to do is make sure that there's something regularly that you guys can tune into, but also watch back. And I had a lot of requests coming in about where can we watch the webinars back. And the distance learning webinar series are basically being held on this web page. So you can get at it by typing in the link at the bottom here, so bit.ly/GFE UK webinars, or you can go back to the original link that you were given the first time round, and you'll find that there's a section called past webinars, and you're able to watch all the ones that we've delivered. Now, as I've said before, we will be adding more to these over time, and particularly around some of the tools that we know there's bigger interest in. Yesterday, we covered Google Classroom and Hangouts Meet, and I think upon reflection, we probably didn't allocate enough time for both of those products. So what we will do after Easter, and once everyone's had a nice relaxing break, hopefully, we'll dive back in and take a bit of a longer, slower paced look at some of those. So please, if you haven't already, share this with colleagues, get them to register, because we'll be sending out weekly emails to tell them what webinars are coming up that week for them to tune into, but also the old webinars that we've done. We've also created a Teach from Home hub, and this is actually a temporary place for teachers to go and find out information on how they can use our tools, and it links them out to key trainings on different things like Google Sites and Docs and email, etc. And that's all in one place, and it's teachfromhome.google. If you type that into your browser, you'll find that it takes you to this homepage. You'll see that it's got this black and white branding, and all of the relevant links are underneath. So if you don't remember anything, I would probably say remember this today, because that will take you to all the other places where all of the good things are, like the Teacher Centre. The Teacher Centre itself is something that we've always had. It's not new, but it's somewhere that hosts all of our online training that teachers can dive into and work at their own pace on. And particularly based on the questions we've had on the past few webinars, I would say more than anything, head over to this place, because this takes things at your own pace. You're able to review and reflect on the content and do things at your own time and your own leisure, rather than kind of having to sit through an hour webinar like we're doing at the moment. So on this Teacher Centre, it includes things like first aid training. So if you're brand new to Google Classroom, it talks you through a really quick and simple way of getting up and started by creating a class and setting an assignment. It also has things like micro courses. So if you're looking at distance learning, for example, has been included on this, so you can go and have a look at that. We also do educator certification. So if you're really quite au fait with G Suite already and just want to kind of get that stamp of approval, and you want to do a qualification in it, you can do that there. And actually what I think probably is the most relevant right now, particularly as staff are working from home, is you can actually sign up for an 8-week email professional development series, and one email will be sent to you every single week on a different topic, and it will just be kind of quick and simple ways to get up and running with Classroom, Gmail, Google Drive, etc. You can find all this at g.co/Teacher Centre, and we will post these in the chat as we go through today. So if you do need to go back and look at anything, this would definitely be the place to go. So for those of you that are brand new to Google for Education and aren't quite sure what it is, basically we have these 3 key elements that make up what we call Google for Education. So we have G Suite for Education, where Google Sites and Google Forms live. It's basically our productivity suite. It has things like word processing in Google Docs, spreadsheets in Google Sheets, and presentations in Google Slides. We also have devices which are Chromebooks, and we're not going to talk about them today, but we have a number of people on the call already who are using Chromebooks in their schools. So if you do have any specific Chromebook questions, please make sure you put them in the chat and we'll try and get them answered. And Britannia Village School specifically on the call today are actually one-to-one Chromebooks with many of their year groups, so we'd be able to answer any questions that you have. Google Classroom, probably the one that most people talk to us about and know us for. It is basically a platform to allow teachers to give out work, give feedback, and then collate the work back from students and really increase that communication, particularly in the current climate that we're in now. We do already have a webinar recorded that you can find on the site that I showed you at the beginning about Google Classroom. And as I said, we will be looking at doing other Google Classroom webinars after Easter. So for today, we're going to be looking at Google Sites. So fairly self-explanatory about what Google Sites is. Basically, it's a really quick and easy website builder. And what we're seeing Google Sites being used for currently are some really great ways to communicate information with parents and students. So we're seeing some schools, and I'll let Britannia Village and Tamfield talk to you about this a little bit later, are posting resources and activities on a Google site that's being then shared with parents and students. But also as an internal kind of intranet, we're seeing schools use this for information to be shared with teachers, almost like as a kind of collaborative or communal space that teachers can get information really quickly and easily. And as I said, we'll go through how to set up a Google site and the different use cases throughout the webinar today. We're also going to have a look at Google Forms. Now, Google Forms kind of covers 2 things, really. One is a surveying tool, and the second one is a quizzing tool. So we're seeing Google Forms used for a number of different ways. One, to check learning and that students have actually completed a task that you may have set in Google Classroom, but also for things like taking attendance, and also for things like mood checking to see how students are feeling that day. Human engagement is really important, and I think there's ways that we can continue that right now. But sometimes just doing a quick check-in on a Google form is a really quick way to see how your students are feeling that day, and also to identify if there's any students that may need following up with a phone call or a chat to a parent. If you are brand new to Google for Education and you're not really sure how to get your school up and started with it, there's a really useful guide, which is basically a quick start guide for IT admins or head teachers, anyone who basically is responsible for IT in your school. It could be an IT coordinator. This shows you how to get up and running with G Suite for Education and get access to all the tools that we're going to look at today, plus G Suite, plus Classroom. So if you do need to share this with IT admins, here's the quick link for it. You can simply give that over to them, and it tells them how you can get going. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Emma from EdTech team, who is going to talk about Google Sites and show us a quick run through on how we can set up a Google site for our school and give us some ideas as well.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Kiri. My name is Emma Pass. I'm actually a former London resident, so hello all my UK friends. I'm now back in the US, where I am a 7th and 8th grade language arts teacher, and I'm also a Google certified trainer. So I'm going to go through a quick little demo with you about how to use Google Sites, starting with how to find your Google site. You can, of course, just Google Sites, and then it will take you to the Google Sites page. I like to mention this because there is an old version, a classic version of Google Sites, but you definitely want to make sure you're in the new sites. Additionally, you could go to a new tab, tap on your waffle, your Google Apps waffle in the top right-hand corner, and you can navigate to Google Sites from there. But by far the quickest and easiest way to do this is just to type in sites.new. Into your Omnibox, your little URL box up there, and it'll automatically take you into a blank Google site template where you can create your site. Now, I use these for a lot of different purposes in my class. We have a class site where there are resources for students and parents. We have a site for our school. I have students create blogs on their sites. But what we're currently doing with Google Sites is we're creating a primary source material to kind of create sources and collect sources to document this historic experience of living through the COVID-19 outbreak. So that's what I'm using Google Sites with my students right at this moment. Once I create the title for my site, I'm going to add all of my content from this toolbar in the right-hand side. Starting with the Insert tab, probably the first thing I want to do is insert a text box to give a little bit more information about what my site is all about. If I click the text box tab, it'll give me a text box, and I've already created a little description of my site here. I can obviously change the text. I can move my text around and resize. And then maybe I want to create an image. I can upload an image from my computer, or better yet, I can select an image from my drive or search directly on Google on the web. So maybe I'll insert a globe here into my site, and then resizing by dragging the bottom corner. I can move my image into different locations in my site just to sort of start to customize it and make it look nice. Next, I can insert different types of materials directly from my Google Drive. So by clicking the Drive icon on that right-hand toolbar, I'm into my Google Drive account. I can go into my primary source material folder, and maybe I'll start by adding in the slide deck that I used with my students to introduce the topic, so they can quickly access that. Another favorite element in Sites for me is if I scroll down to the bottom, I can add a button. A button allows your students or parents to click directly into a new link. One thing I like to do on Google Sites is link directly to my Google Classroom assignment. So I'm just going to copy the link here from Google Classroom, paste it into the button. And my students have a quick and easy link to get back to that assignment in case they need to do any work there. So my homepage is looking pretty good. I'm going to add a new page now to actually work on the primary source material. Back in my right-hand side toolbar, I'll go to Pages, and then big plus sign at the bottom, add a new page. This is going to be my material. We have a blank new page, and then once again, I'll need to insert the content. So going back to the Insert button, I'm going to go back to my Drive, and this time I have one of my students' documents that they created. It's a Google Doc, so directly from my Drive, inserting that whole document, and I can resize so you can see the entire thing. The only tip here when inserting documents straight from your Google Drive is you want to keep your sharing settings in mind. So if this is set to just a private sharing, a third-party visitor wouldn't necessarily be able to view it. So you always want to make sure you go and open up that Google Doc and check your sharing settings. Make sure that everyone will be able to access and view that doc on your site. One more thing I'll add to my material page here is a video. You can insert videos directly from YouTube, which is super handy. So I might look for a COVID-19 vlog, another good primary source material. Your students might have already uploaded theirs to YouTube, or maybe you're looking for a kind of third-party material. I can select a video and again, reorder and resize that directly on my page. Getting ready to publish, the last thing I'm going to want to do is make it look really nice. So over here on the theme section, you have a lot of different options about how you can kind of customize the theme. I'm going to head and choose this one down here at the bottom, customize my color, and even the font. And now that it's looking the way I want it to look, I'm ready to publish. Big blue button up here, top right, allows me to publish. Now, one question I get a lot of times from teachers is a little bit of privacy concern or data sharing concern with publishing a website to the web. One really nice feature in Google Sites is if you have a G Suite for Education account, you're able to publish only within your domain. So the only people able to look at that site would be people within your school's domain who already have an account. However, if you want to share wider with parents or guardians, you might want to click Manage and then switch it to, instead of anyone at your district, you would want to switch it to anyone in the web can view that published version of your site. I'm going to give it primary source material. Now that my site is published, oh, good, it's published. I can click my down arrow here, view that published site. And then take this link, copy it, and I'm going to go ahead and share it with all of you. And that concludes my little demo. Thank you all for watching.
Thanks, Emma. I think what we'll do is we'll actually head into questions to see if there's anything specifically that's come up on sites. I know that there was one about access to new sites, so I'm happy to jump in and answer that one. Basically, sometimes in your admin console, some services might not be turned on, and that might be for a variety of different reasons from the school or the IT admin. So if Google Sites isn't turned on at all, and you can't, when you type in sites.google.com, and it's not there, basically you need to contact your IT admin, whoever manages your G Suite for Education account, and ask them to turn it on, or ask them why they haven't turned it on, and obviously find that out internally. Someone's asked, can you change the privacy settings once published? Emma, I'll pass that on to you.
Yes, not only can you change the privacy settings afterwards, you can also unpublish your site if there are changes that you want to make, or if you decide that you'd rather not have it live on the web anymore.
Awesome. If there are any other questions, probably now is the time to ask. But I think actually you did such a good job, Anna. Everyone just kind of went quiet when you were obviously watching. If you're taken through from the internet, does it store a reference or take into account any copyright? Good question. So the question is, if you were taking things from the internet, does it store a reference? I think me and this guy are trying to add it at the same time. Does it take into account any copywriting?
So you watched me insert images directly from a Google search. The great thing about using that direct search from Google within Google Sites is all of those images are already copyright free. So you don't have to worry about that specific referencing, but it's always good practice, especially as a language arts teacher, to teach your students to cite your sources. So that could be really easily done at the bottom in a text box, is have them cite their sources at the bottom. Great question.
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much, Emma. That was awesome. I think what we're going to do now is go on to Google Forms, and then we'll bring you back at the end in case we have any more site questions. Thanks so much. Thank you. Okay, and with that, I'm going to pass on to Andy Caffrey. He's also from EdTech team, who's going to give us a demo of Google Forms. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Kiri, and hello, everyone. Welcome to this short webinar when we're going to go through Google Forms. So Emma showed us earlier on about how we move around the different Google products, and Google Forms also sits in the waffle bar, and there's an icon for Google Forms. Or alternatively, on the internet, you could just go to forms.google.com to load up Google Forms, or you could create a new form in your Google Drive. Whichever way you choose to get to it, you'll end up on a page like we can see now on my screen here. And this is the Google Forms starting page. And if I want to make a new form, I can just hit the big plus button. So plus in Google always means new. And it will just create for me a blank form. Or if I wanted to, like Emma showed earlier, I could type forms.new into the browser address bar and it would make a form that way. So all of these ways would take us to this page where we have a blank Google form. As Kiri mentioned previously, there's two big things we do with Google Forms. One of them is to create an information collection, and we want to find out something. And the other tool really is for quizzes. So we're going to just start with an information form. And at the moment, lots of teachers thinking about well-being. We might be concerned about the well-being of our students. So we might be interested in how are you feeling today? So we might be doing a form about well-being, a check-in form for our class. So give it a title, check-in form, and then just pop in the questions box here, a question on here, how are you feeling today? And then maybe I want people to give a score on this answer. So I have some different question types I could ask. On the right, at the moment, it's on multiple choice, but I have a whole range of question types here. So short answer and paragraph for short and long answers. Multiple choice where you can only pick one correct answer, and then checkbox where you can pick more than one correct answer. Drop down if I've got a big list. File upload if I want someone to upload a file of something. But I'm going to actually choose this one, linear scale today, because I'm going to have people to say how they're feeling from 1, and I'm going to scale it from 1 to 10 on my form, where 1 is not great and 10 would be amazing. So to find out just the feeling of various people, I can just create a form at this point. I could obviously add additional questions like name and everything else, but for now I'm going to leave my form at that very basic level and just go over to the send box to get a link to this form. So when I press send, the first choice it gives me is the option to email this out to people. So if I had a set list of people I wanted to fill my form in, I could just send it out via email. I don't want to do that right now. I'm just going to go to the link page here, and it gives me a big long link. I'm just going to click the box to make it a bit shorter, and it gives me a short link to my form. I'm just going to grab that short link, and then I'm going to go and drop it into the YouTube in just a second for you to be able to fill in. So I'm going to just drop that across to YouTube so that you can fill the form in, and then we can see what it looks like when people start to put the results in. I don't do that right now. I'm just excuse me. So here comes the form in YouTube. So you can fill the form in, and then we can get some results to that form, see how you guys are feeling today, coming back into our form in just a second or two. So as soon as you see that link in YouTube, feel free to drop on, just click onto the form, and it should give you the question. You'll be able to answer how you are feeling today in the form. So here I am back on the form. I've got the question. If I wanted to know what the form is going to look like for my end user, I can just click the preview button here, and that shows me what the form looks like. So that gives me a view of what it's going to look like for people who receive this form. and I can just score the form now. I'm going to give myself 6 and submit that in. So that's me submitting, testing the form. If I come back now over here, I've got a response there. I know that response is, it's probably me just filling it in just now. So I can go into responses over there, and I can see that response, that my response has come in. So as the form is out and about, as people fill a form in, that form is live for people to add information in, and they can, the form updates in real time. So as you make a form, the data moves in live, and we see the form on this page. It's giving me a graph at this point of just the spread of numbers coming into that form. But the other choice I have over here is to create a spreadsheet. So on the right-hand side here, I've also the choice to create a spreadsheet of the data that's coming in. So when I create spreadsheet, you just ask me if I want to create a new spreadsheet, and I'll just click on that. And then that will allow my spreadsheet to be created. So here's my form, and obviously here's someone's filled it in there, and that was me earlier, and they put 6 in. So we've got a live link spreadsheet now that's linked to my form. And as soon as anyone fills that in, the data is going to appear in the spreadsheet as well. So Google Forms is a really nice tool, because once we've made a form and we send it out to our class or our students or to other teachers to gather information, that information just flows nicely back into a spreadsheet. And in some ways, I used to think about that when I was teaching, as Google Forms was really useful because people were typing the information in for me. So when people are putting information into a form, it flows back through, it flows into the forms, and it flows into the spreadsheet that way.
Andy, I'm just going to jump in because the questions are coming through that they can't see the form. Would you be able to share it with the chat?
Yeah, I'll just pop it in again with the chat.
I don't think it came through.
Okay. Well, I'm going to grab the link again. So I'm going over to send form again. It's a nice little demo. I'm going over to send form and just grabbing the link over there. If I go send, get the link, shorten the URL, copy that there. So I'm just Control-C to copy it. I'm moving over to the chat again. Let's try it again. Paste it in there. It might actually be, I wonder if the YouTube feed has got restricted so I can't put links into the chat. It may be that. So that may be what's blocking the form coming through. Some YouTube videos don't allow just people to pop links into the chat for security reasons. So it might be that that's catching my link out. So if we can't fill it in, we can see what happens from the process. Oh, there we are. Someone from Google's posted my link. So thank you, whoever's on the main account. So coming back to my form then. So we created a form. We created a nice, simple one-question form. And we've seen what happens, what it looks like from going to the eyeball, and we've seen what it looks like when someone fills that in. And we'll see if more data comes in now that links out. In terms of the design of the form, come back to the questions page. Right now, everything by default is always a purple theme, because that's the sort of color assigned to Google Forms. But at the top here, we have some options for customized theme. So we can choose different colors.
Andy, I'm just going to jump in one more time.
Yeah.
Sorry. The form at the minute is locked down to your domain. So if you could show everyone how you open that up, because actually it's set by default, right? So this is a really important step when someone's creating a form.
Thank you, Kiri.
Thanks, Andy. Sorry, I'll stop interrupting you now.
That's fine. It's a really good point. So something you need to bear in mind, you need to remember, is up in settings here, we can choose who can fill a form in. So over here, it says restrict users, and I'll just turn that off and press save so that users can fill that form in. So up in settings, we have some additional choices. And the default would only allow people in my school or my organization to fill a form in, thinking about data protection and who can access a form. So that restriction's on, which is why people can't get to it. So now that's unticked, we might see some data come in. We were talking about the design of forms. So just going back a step, I'd gone to the customized theme, and I've seen that I can choose different colors over here, so I can brand this form. If you've got a particular style that you have as a school, we can upload a header image and put that into the top of the form, or we can choose an image from the default choices that are in there. So as a geography teacher, I like to sort of get the outdoor ones. So I might come down here to one of these, maybe this basketball one for now, insert that in, just to give some style to my form, to make it look a bit different. And as the image comes in, it themes the colors with the image, the colors it sees in the image. So if you've got a school logo or a style you use, if you put that image at the top, the form will match that branding style. So it will pick the colors out and it'll match that branding style automatically when you're creating a form. So I can tell the form is out and about now because 61 people have filled it in. So thank you to all the people that have filled the form in. And here we can see that data coming in live, 64 people. As that data comes in, that graph is just moving and changing as people fill the form in over there. And if I then jump across to the spreadsheet, I'll just close the little theme options. If I jump back to my spreadsheet, the data will be filtering in here live as well. So we can see our spreadsheet updating live in real time. As each of you fills the form in, we can see that data just flowing through and bringing me live data into my sheet in real time. So Google Forms is a really nice tool just for that data collection piece. And you can see how quickly I've just created a single question form and sent that out and got that out to people. So that's just creating a form at this point. And that's something that a lot of people use in their schools to start to automate what are probably paperwork systems in your school right now. In my school, we took all the pieces of paper in the staff room, things like the trip request form and the can I go on a CPD request form, and we turned them into Google Forms so the process could happen automatically in the background. The other big use of Google Forms is to create a quiz. So I'm going to come back out of Google Forms and just go to my address bar and type in forms.new and just make a second form. So this time round, I'm making another Google form, but this time round, I'm going to make a quiz. So this time around, it's going to be some of my students to answer. So I'm going to put quiz as the title. As I'm a geography teacher, I'm going to ask a nice geographical question. I'm going to ask, what is the start of a river called? And then I'm going to give some choices in there. So I'm going to put in source. I'm going to put in mouth. I'm going to put in delta. So just a simple multiple choice question there that I want my students to answer. At this point in time, this is not a quiz yet. This is a form. If I send this out right now, students can obviously answer it and pick one choice because multiple choice, but they can't necessarily know which is right and wrong. So I'm going to go up to the settings over here. And in settings, I'm going to go over to quizzes. And I'm going to slide this slider across, which says make this a quiz. So I'm asking my Google to make this form a quiz so that we can then start to use it with a class. Now I've made it a quiz, press save, and come back down here. I've now got an option for an answer key at the bottom of my quiz. And in answer key, I can tell it the correct answer as a geographer is source. And when someone answers that correctly, I'm going to give it 1,000 points. I'm going to be very generous on this question, but you can totally choose your own mark schemes per question and press done on that. So now we've told Google the correct answer for that question. So as a student gets that question and answers it, if they pick source, it's going to give them 1,000 points. Here in answer key, I also have the option to answer feedback. So what I can do here is I can give some feedback to students who get that wrong. Maybe if they get it wrong, I'd like them to watch a YouTube video about the different parts of a river basin. So I could actually give them further resources to help students who can't answer the question. And obviously for correct answers, maybe I've got some feedback there to say, well done. You clearly understand the different parts of a river basin. So I can program that feedback into Google so that when students answer this question, they're automatically given feedback to the questions they're answering. And that really expands the power of Google Forms because not only are we able to collect data, put those quizzes in there, but we can give the students personalized feedback and help them work on the things they can't do. And that's one of the things I find most powerful about Forms is that ability to almost provide a differentiated choice through that process, because that's the other thing I could do. On an individual question in Google Forms, which come on done there, I can just press the little 3 dots, the little narrow snowman, and I can say go to section based on answer. So after a student answers this question, I could then ask further questions. If they get the question wrong, I could take them down a route of simpler questions. And if they get the question right, I could take them down a route of maybe more difficult questions. So I can start to build a pathway within my form for some pure differentiation during the assessment. A couple more tips for using it with quizzes. Certainly one of my favorite little tips for quizzes is to, in settings, just ask Google in terms of presentation to shuffle the question order. And that means if you're doing this form back in school and the students are sitting next to each other, if you've got maybe 10 questions in there, the students will get a different randomized order of questions. So they don't necessarily, if they're sitting next to each other, they won't get the same questions at the same time. So a really nice way for doing a simple quiz of just mixing up those questions. Just bear in mind, if you shuffle the question order, you're going to shuffle everything in. So if you put a question in, what is your name, what is your form, to get the details on the students, and that could get shuffled in. But an alternative way to avoid asking that question is to go and collect email addresses on the first page here. You can set a form to collect email addresses, and that means that when they fill the form in, if they're signing into a Google account, it will take their Google account username and details. That's really useful internally if you've got students coming to a computer room, signing into Google Classroom and going to a form. And that's the final bit I want to mention about forms, because forms is integrated really tightly with Google Classroom. So in Google Classroom, I can assign a form to my class, and if it's a self-marking quiz like we just built there, those grades can be automatically imported back into the gradebook in Google Classroom. So Google Forms really adds to the power of Google Classroom when we're using those two together. So hopefully this is a quick little guided tour there of Google Forms. Obviously, I'm around to answer any questions that we've got in the chat, and I'll carry on in the chat and start to pick those questions up afterwards if anyone's got anything else they want to ask. But that's a quick tour of Google Forms.
Thanks, Andy. Really, really great. We had some good questions coming in. I'm actually going to go back to one that came in quite a bit earlier. Is there a way to do digital signatures on a Google form? I've just found it, so I'm going to bring it in.
Yeah, there isn't a direct way of doing digital signatures. A couple of different ways people would use that in terms of if you're doing a permission form, let's say for a trip or something. Well, actually, 3 different ways that come to mind that I've used it back in my old school that I did that. One, you could have an upload. So you could have an upload box and you could ask people to upload an image of something if you really need a signature as opposed to a tick box. The second option is the sort of internet disclaimer tick box. You're ticking to say, I have read and agreed to this. And the final thing that I used to do was in my school, we did all our option choices, all our GCSE option choices through a form. And we simply asked the email address of the parent. And then in Google Forms in the back end, we sent the responses back out to them again, just to send the responses back to the person that filled the form in. So effectively, the parents were getting a notification of what the form said, so that we could then say, oh, those were the choices you made, that we sent them back to you as a copy. So a few different ways of using forms there if you want to just tighten up that process.
Great tip. One other question was, is there a limited amount of questions that can be edited on a quiz form? I have never reached a limit, but I don't know how you may have.
There's probably some horrendous number that is the answer, like 10,000. I've built some long quizzes with branching routes, and I must admit I haven't reached a limit. One of the things you can do in Google Forms now, as a recent update, is you can bring questions from another form into a form. So if you've already got a form and it's filled with some great questions, you want to use a few of those questions in another form, you can bring questions across. So that's useful, save time. But to my knowledge, I've not hit a limit yet. There must be a lot.
Thank you. Another question, can they see the right or wrong answers so they can change as they go, or does it have to be submitted first?
In the quizzes, forms have to be submitted. Then you choose whether at that point they can see the answers or whether you want to do some sort of release or reveal at some point later. So you can choose whether at the end of the quiz, once they've submitted, they see the answers, the correct answers and the feedback, or whether they see it at a point in the future. But they do have to have submitted all the pages to be able to see those answers. If you wanted to have it where some answers were revealed, I suppose the other option would be to make a form and then make a second form, and so they could do it that way, and you could link the second form off the first one, if that makes sense, if you wanted to have a part answer reveal.
Yeah, good idea. One last question, I think that's all we'll have time for before we move on. Can you limit the number of responses, or does it need to be a plugin?
So within Google Forms itself, you can't, but there's add-ons in Google Forms, and that's why I've bringing additional services into Google Forms. And so there are both question limiters and form limiters available in the add-ons area for Google Forms. So I remember making a form for a school trip once, and there were 52 seats on the coach. So I simply had the form turn itself off when 52 people had filled the form in. So you can do that through the add-ons, but it's not a direct option in Google Forms.
And it has to be turned on in your admin console, right? It's not just automatically there. Yeah,
some schools would give access to all add-ons. Some schools give access to staff to have access to add-ons. And some schools block add-ons, which means you couldn't use that tool. So it will vary on your data settings that you've got set up at your school.
And I think with that, actually, we might have some, that might be a good question to ask the schools that are on the call today to see whether they've got access or haven't, and what might be the benefits or limitations of that. So with that, thank you so much, Andy. That was a really good run through of the ways that we can use Google Forms. I'm now going to pass over to Luke and Kate from Britannia Village School, who are going to be presenting on how they use Google Forms and Sites within their school right now. Thanks both.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kiri. So hello, my name's Luke, and I'm a Year 2 teacher at Britannia Village School, and I'm also a Google Innovator and Trainer. And Kate?
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm a Year 5 teacher at Britannia Village. Yeah.
So Britannia Village is a primary school over in East London. And in 2017, we went one-to-one. We bought one-to-one Chromebooks for every child from Year 2 up to Year 6. And we became a Google reference school in 2018. So we want to show how we're using a Google site to kind of provide home learning for our students. So Kate is going to start off giving her example of how they do it in Year 5.
Okay, so this is our Year 5 home learning site. Across the top, we've got a separate page for each day of the week. We trialed it having for each subject, but it didn't really work that way. So we preferred having it as just a day. At the top of each day, we have, Luke, back on the previous one. At the top of each day, we have a timetable, and that everything is laid out in order of the timetable for each day. Yeah, so for reading for this particular day, we had a form embedded onto the site, and the kids could just answer it straight on the home learning site rather than having to click onto a different screen. Then on the next one, for writing, I've got a video that was recorded with Screencastify of me modelling how to use Jamboard, and that's been embedded into the site as well. And then, onto maths, again, using Screencastify, explaining the whole maths problems, and then the kids could just do their own, copy that into their workbook or use those examples in their workbook. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how we use it in Year 2. So this year, I went down to Year 2, and so working with 6 and 7-year-olds, and one of my kind of challenges was to see what we can do with this age group. So at the start of the year in September, they couldn't even log into their Chromebook, and there were lots of issues, but they've really taken it on board, and to see how far they've come is quite amazing now. And yeah, like Kate said, one of the strongest or the most powerful things about using the Google site is that you can just embed all of these different things like Google Forms and slides and videos and everything else, and just have it nice and neatly on one page. So this is our day. This is actually today's lesson. So children doing this as we speak. We've started recording our morning meetings so that we can do shout outs to individual students so that they can sort of hear their name, and we can say, oh, that work that you did yesterday was so good, keep it up. And parents have said they really like, the students really enjoy listening to those. We're trialing just in Year 2 a very simple Google form embedded that works like an online register. And I have to shout out Gavin Hannell here, who was in the chat earlier, but he helped me with this. So the students will just click submit, and then it goes into a Google Sheet, and then Gavin helped me kind of create this interface where we can see what time the students logged on, percentages of how many of them are engaging. Now, it's not foolproof because in theory, they could click that they've registered and then turn it off and sit with their feet up for the whole day. But it does kind of at least show, all right, this child hasn't logged in for the whole week, so maybe I'll just call their parent and see if they need any more support. Then, yeah, we also have lessons for maths content, and we kind of share this out. So different teachers will do the lessons videos for different subjects. And sometimes we use a Flipgrid link to allow the students to interact and kind of respond. So these are videos that they sent in today. I've blurred out lots of the faces, but it's really nice being able to watch these and give video replies and letting the students reply to each other as well. And then also at the end of the day, one of the other Year 2 teachers does a story time, which is going down well. So that's how we're using it with Year 2. And I can put this link in afterwards, but I've just got here, I've made some 2-minute demos. They do go quite quickly for all of the tools that we've kind of mentioned, but yeah, that's on YouTube, so I can put that in the chat afterwards.
Thanks both. Really great to see primary schools, right, using these tools. I think some of the kind of issues some of the kind of key challenges and concerns around distance learning with primary is, access and students being comfortable with the tools. Just before, I know we're going to do Q&A after, but I think, Luke, you've learned this the hard way this year, right, by going down to year 2, but what was the biggest challenge you had with students moving to an online platform? And admittedly, they did this before now, right? They were using the tools anyway. But what was the biggest challenge and how did you overcome that?
So the biggest challenge was really getting them to access it from home, because in school on the Chromebooks that they use, it has the domain pre-filled. So they only have to remember their username. So it's a little bit easier to put that in. Whereas at home, the first time they do it, they'll have to put in the full address. So in the kind of, when we could kind of see that we were going to shut at the end of the week, we did a lot of practice in school. We turned off the pre-filled domain and got them all to practice typing it in. And some of the year 2s, they didn't even understand what a backspace was. So if they wrote it wrong, they just kind of start completely again. So yeah, there are a few challenges there, but yeah, we've kind of got there. We have about between 75% and 80% at least getting onto the site and clicking it. And we're trying to call up the parents and talk them through it step by step for those that haven't managed to engage yet.
And there is a question coming actually from Belinda. Hi, Belinda. If you have a one-to-one device set up at Britannia Village, have they taken the Chromebooks home, or is that an option?
Yeah.
Okay, so we originally, the idea was that they stay in school because our students can't even remember to bring in their reading books and jumpers and everything. So we wanted to know that teachers would have 20 Chromebooks, and then we said, all right, we'll get some using the Cloud Ready software, Neverware. We converted some old devices and we said, well, we could give those out to students that need it. But they went really quickly, and we realized actually there's lots of students at home, 3 or 4 of them at home, and all trying to share one device. And so we said, all right, let's just completely open up our Chromebooks, change the settings and let them all go home. So, I was the one who in 2017, you put all the cable ties into every single bit to get all the charges in, and we were cutting them all out, and I've got a feeling I'm going to have to do it again when we go back, but we'd rather have access for the next few weeks or months than not.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to bring you guys back in at the end, because we want to hear from the next school. But thank you so much. That was a great story, and hopefully people got some really good ideas from what you guys are doing. So thanks a lot.
Okay.
Okay. Next we have Dan and Nisha from Tanfield School. Hello. Hi, Nisha. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
And so I'm going to leave you guys just to let us know what you're doing with Google Forms. And I think you're going to talk to us about Google Sites as well. So take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Fitzpatrick. I'm Careers Lead at Tanfield School in County Durham. Also co-present the EduFuturist podcast at edufuturist.com.
And I'm Nisha Stevenson, and I'm Assistant Head at Tanfield School and also the Subject Leader for History.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're just going to go through, building on what Andy said, kind of how we're using those tools in our school at the moment. And we're using them in so many different ways. So we've just created a few slides here. So first of all, as Andy said, as an information collecting tool. So we're using that side of it for kind of surveying, gathering that information. So I'll just go through these quickly. So collecting parents' email addresses for Google Classroom so that then the email addresses can be connected to student accounts so that parents and guardians can get those guardian reports. Also, student and staff feedback. So it's been said a few times already on this webinar, but I think it's really vital to try and get especially student feedback during this time on their well-being and how they're finding remote learning so that we can continue to tweak those methods. Also, parents have been asked about online learning. So if they've got any questions about how to access Google Classroom and they still can't do it, even though we've given them the videos and the tutorials, then they can do that. Also, we have embedded a lot of our training videos into Google Forms. This is a nice way to get the feedback and the data of who's watching. So, for example, when we knew that schools were going to close a couple of weeks ago, we created a tutorial video, and that tutorial video was to make sure all staff were up to speed on the tools, and we just embedded that into a Google form. And I'll show you that now, actually. So if I come over here, so this was what we sent out to all staff. So you can see there, I've embedded the video. So I uploaded it to YouTube, embedded it in there. And I'll show you that from the editing side of things. So I did that by simply just clicking the add video on the option panel on the right hand side and putting the URL in of that YouTube video, and that went there. And then we just created some questions to go with it so that we knew that staff were taking in the information, and that when the government did close schools in the UK on that Friday afternoon, that we were confident that all of the staff knew at least the basics, so then we could build on that from home. We're using Google Meets, and which we have been doing for the last couple of weeks. Nisha, is there anything you want to come in on there?
I think I'd say as well that we used the Google Forms to liaise with parents in quite rapidly, because once we realised that schools will be closing, it was a way for us to gather information about who had access to being online, who had access to devices. So it meant as a school, we could organise things like Chromebooks being lent out, but also dongles for students who might require it. And also we did that for staff as well, to ensure that everyone was able to work remotely. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, and I think just it's probably worth noting that before all of this even happened, we were using them in various ways. And just as an example of one way we were using them was during lesson observations. So to save those staff who were doing observations, going into lessons, writing all their notes down, and then taking them away afterwards and writing them back up into a spreadsheet, we give our staff who were doing observations a Google form, which meant they could just go through the form during the observation and answer the questions there of what was they were expecting to see. Then all that information was put into a spreadsheet, which was really handy and saved a lot of work there. So should we go on to the kind of the second use, and probably the best way we're using Google Forms at the moment is as a learning tool. So we actually, and we had a full staff Google Meet last night, didn't we, Nisha, about all of this. So I'm sure, like many other schools at the moment, on that Friday when the government shut the schools, we thought, you know what, we've already using Google Classroom, already using G Suite in many ways. We'll just have to tweak a few things, put some methods in place, and we'll be okay. And we're quickly learning that we're having to tweak on a daily basis, really, keep and fine tuning how we're doing it so that staff and students and parents all have the most efficient way of learning and the best information on how to do that. So we're doing that every day. We're having full staff meetings. We're having small group meetings just to try to tweak this. So one of the things that we quickly realized, especially at the start of this week, was that a lot of staff were in their Google Classrooms setting many and varied ways of doing work, which I think normally is fantastic. However, our students were getting confused. So we're not a one-to-one school. So what we've been doing for the last year is students have been using Google Classroom primarily for homework and for quizzing. So using Google Forms for quizzing. So what they were so used to using Google Forms for quizzing that we thought, well, why don't we just take it a step back a second and let's try and focus our learning using a Google Form. So we came up last night with something called the 3-section Google Form lesson. And it's essentially creating those different sections within a Google Form. And I'll show you an example of this in just a sec. Creating those different sections so that first section is your retrieval questions. Second section is your new content with questions and hinge questions based on that. And then the third section being the consolidation. So it's taken that simple structure of a lesson that I'm sure many of us know from those PGCE days, and using it in a Google Form so that there's uniformity across many subjects, and students, especially at this time as they're trying to deal with many changes, they will know that whatever lesson they're in, there's going to be a structure that matches other subjects, and they're not having to get to grips with many new things all at once. So that's what we've done at the moment, and I'll jump into that and I think Nisha's going to just give us a little talk about how we're using Google Forms for retrieval questions. So I'm just going to show you this, and this is from the edit side of things. So this is, as you can see here, this is section 1. I actually got a bit overzealous in this bit. It was the 3-section lesson plan, but it became the 5-section lesson plan because there was 3 sections of new content. But yeah, as you can see there, so first of all, we have our retrieval questions. Nisha, I'll hand over to you.
Right, really importantly from us this week, I think one of the things we've learned is how we can use the retrieval aspect of it to make sure we are using interleaved questioning. As a historian, it's really vital that our students build up a whole bank of knowledge, but that applies across the curriculum. So one of the things we've done is create large documents of questions, very much like was explained earlier on in the webinar. But we've divided the job out and we've made sure that we've got them that cover whole units, and we're building that up as work for us to work through. So it means it's really easy to import questions from somewhere else. So when you're thinking about your recap at the start of the lesson, you can really tailor it to what they might have found hard last lesson, what you've seen in the quizzing that we're still setting for homework, but also how they did in the classwork, the stretch, or what they did later on within the lesson Dan's going to talk us through. So we really, really rate the import part of the feature because it means it's easy to select questions. And one of the things we are going to be trialing next week is really selecting which questions to give students. So if we know from the spreadsheet they found certain aspects hard, that they can actually be doing different questions in terms of homework quizzing to really build on their knowledge. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, and just to show you on the screen there how that works, I'll do that again. So essentially how we're using this, like Nisha said, is to take those questions from previous lessons and then using them for retrieval at the start of the next lesson. So on the right-hand panel, import questions, select the Google Form quiz where the previous questions were. When you click that, then on the right-hand side, you see a list of all of the questions from that previous quiz, and you can just select that and it imports it in. So a massive time-saving tool there, especially as we're asking a lot from staff at the moment, as they have lots of stuff going on at home and families to look after. So that's going to be an essential feature from Google there. So I'm just going to take you through. I'm going to go back to here. New content. How do we put new content into Google Form and how we're doing it at Tanfield School? So if I take you to section 2, you can see there that this is an RE class. So there's a YouTube video there and there's questions on it. And you can put that video in there on the right-hand panel again. And text. So I've just selected a text box from the right-hand panel and put that in. And there's another video there. You can also use images. So it's a nice way to teach new content, really. And kind of, as Andy Caffrey said earlier in his demo, something that could also be done here, which we've been doing on some quizzes, is stretch and reteach sections based on their answers. So if they get a certain answer wrong, it'll lead them to a section that does a bit of reteach, introduce them to the content maybe in a more simple form so that they can be retaught that and then answer questions on it again. Just want to show you in here a nice way that we are stretching students, and it's using the feature of uploading. So if I go to add a question, I can choose from the types of questions to file upload. So essentially in this lesson, what I asked was then as a stretch exercise to go away and create something based on the lesson. And then I wanted them to either upload that image or upload a photograph of whatever they'd created. And they can do that by clicking the add file. I'll show you what that looks like from their point of view. Actually, I'm going to have to, because these are all required, I'll have to put an answer for every single one and go through all 5 sections. But trust me, what they see is a button that says upload. They click that and then they can upload that file. That goes into a folder in the Google Drive and they can access all of that.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Nisha. It's really great to hear from, different schools, to see how everyone's kind of doing things in such different ways. And I know it's not kind of a one size fits all. And I really appreciate your honesty and the fact that, Google Forms has really worked for you in the past for homework, and now you're using it for a really good method for distance learning. And I'm sure a lot of people on the webinar today probably are in similar situations and are trying to look for those what we call quick wins. I guess I know it's not that quick getting everything set up and shared out to students, but I definitely think that it's great to just see the different ways of using things. So thank you to both schools for sharing your stories. Thank you to the questions that are coming in. I don't actually think there's been anything specifically that hasn't been answered. I know there was a quick question about Screencastify and how to do that, and we're seeing schools use that really well to create videos and content over things. But thanks. And so we've got Rachel's response there. Screencastify is available with premium features. So the last thing that I just wanted to really ask you is, for those teachers that are on today watching live and are maybe really brand new to G Suite and maybe aren't using Google Classroom, maybe are in a similar situation to Dan and Nisha were before kind of what's been going on. What a piece of advice would you give to a teacher just starting out? Imagine go back to the time when you were brand new to this. I'll start with Luke. Luke, what would your piece of advice be?
Well, there's so much you can do across the whole of G Suite, and so maybe it can be a bit intimidating. But just maybe find one small way that you can start using it day to day, and then you just kind of pick up other ways and see how it links together. And when you get used to one, say Google Forms, you start noticing that, the settings cog and all of the other symbols are the same in other programs. And so you start feeling a bit more comfortable using the G Suite products. And then you'll realize how much time it can save you.
Nisha, I'll pass over to you.
I think really for me, it was about practice, because although we'd used it as homework tool and we've been introduced to Google 2 years ago through Dan, it was for me sitting down, and what was really helpful was using, like, I know Luke mentioned they've got the guides for 2 minutes on YouTube. We had the guides that Dan had made, and it was really using those carefully, going back through and just practicing and trial and error. And when I'm making mistakes, saying, right, what have I done, and making note of it and moving on.
And I will actually just post that. Thanks, Nisha. I'm just going to post what you referred to there into the comments. So, sorry, I'm just posting it. So Luke's kindly shared his link to the YouTube, the quick and easy steps of how to get started, the 2-minute one. So please feel free to go and take a look at them. Kate, over to you then. What would be your top tip for a teacher starting out?
I think probably don't be scared of using tech. I was so petrified coming into BV and everyone's so tech savvy. But yeah, I just learnt by doing it, I guess. And now it's, such a huge part of my teaching. So yeah, it's been good.
And you're level 2 now, aren't you?
Oh, well
yes.
Done. Well done. Certified trainer next, Luke. We need to get her on. Okay, and Dan, finally from you.
I think just click the button, see what they do. There's a lot of stuff that I was introducing this to a while ago and really struggled with it. And now that they're in a situation that they're kind of forced to use it, they have to use it in terms of this is how they're going to communicate with their students. They're kind of being forced to click the button and see what it does and experiment. And the amount of staff who are coming back saying 6 months ago, I didn't have a clue. I didn't know what that did or what that did, but now because I'm experimenting with it, I get it and I'm using it, and they're amazed with themselves. The payoff is amazing when you can successfully teach your students, especially at this time remotely, and you can see them learning. With everything against us at the minute, the payoff is huge. And also, if I can add a second one, sorry, Kerry, use that online PLN. There's so many people who've been chatting on the chat here that will answer questions on Twitter. That will offer advice. Get on Twitter, use that PLN on there, and join that community because they'll help you.
Great. Yeah, and I'd just like to echo that as well. We have so many great supportive people, and you'll notice in the chat, as Dan said, so many faces that we know really well, who are always happy to help and will always give up their time to support any other schools that reach out and look for it. Any schools that are in London, LGFL are working closely with their schools to create a programme to get you supported. So Graham, who's on the chat today, might be able to talk to you a little bit more about that. But just with that, I'd like to say thank you so much to everyone for taking the time out. As Dan put it so well, this is a really challenging time for everyone, and just having people, take an hour out of their day. Thank you firstly to the presenters for prepping and presenting today, but also to everyone tuning in to watch these webinars. We're trying to be as helpful as possible by creating these, and hopefully being able to watch them back will mean that you'll be able to share with colleagues and get the kind of word out about how easy these tools are to use. So just a final recap from me. Create a Google site to put some great resources on to share with parents and students, but also maybe as a kind of internal intranet. And use a Google form as a quiz. Why not just go and try it out, get it started and see how you get on? You're not going to break anything. Just click any buttons and see what they do. So that's my final thoughts. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Andy and Emma, who also presented today. They were amazing as always. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.